Greetings builders, Daniel here, and today I'm gonna show you 3 of the most played builds during the second week of the Necropolis League. As always, if you wanna try any of those, you can find links for POBs and complete guides in the video description. And if this video helps you, please leave a thumbs up to support the channel. Thank you very much, and let's get into it! Let's start with this build that right now is on top of the meta, the Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction Necromancer with the Witch class. This build uses the Transfigure gem Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction to explode many corpses with only one click, and clear huge amounts of enemies quickly without sacrificing single target damage. To visit the pros of this build, I would start with its survivability. Once you have a little more currency, you can make this character almost immortal with just a few unique items. It's absolutely amazing. This is also very simple and cheap to put together. It doesn't need any mandatory unique item, and above all, it also counts with great clear speed and boss damage. Now to visit the cons, the first thing that comes to mind is that you need to keep casting Desecrate before using Detonate Dead, and some players just don't like this kind of playstyle where you need to use 2 different skills all the time. Another issue is that in order to have an optimized damage, you need to farm 5 specific specters, but don't worry, on my complete guide I'll teach you exactly where to find them. As for budget, this build is super cheap. You can get it destroying early in game maps with only around 55 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 120 chaos, and for easily completing our atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines, but you can totally do it with less. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. For clear speed, I'll give this build 9 out of 10. With only one click, your Detonate Dead will start a chain reaction of explosions that will clear the whole screen of enemies. I just took 1 point out because we always have to start casting Desecrate first. The boss damage is very good and deserves 8 out of 10. With media investment, you are going to kill guardians in a matter of seconds. It's just awesome to watch all those explosions on their feet. For the survivability, I'll give it 10 out of 10. If you invest a little bit more currency buying a 4th Val armor and Glorious Vanity Jewel, you end up with almost half a million effective HP, which is nearly unkillable. Next, we have this amazing build that is the second most played of all Necropolis League, the Hexblast Mines Saboteur with the Shadow class. Hexblast is a very interesting skill that deals a lot of extra damage if the enemy it hits is already cursed. Besides that, it also creates a big pulse of damage that destroys all nearby monsters. That's why it's important that our enemies are always cursed. To list the pros of this build, I would start with how powerful it gets with low investment. With cheap and easy to find items, we're going to make bosses disappear with your mind chain reactions. Part of that is because Hexblast can naturally shock, freeze and ignite enemies, and if that wasn't good enough, it also considers the lowest resistance the enemy has before calculating the damage. This build is also very fast and deals a lot of area damage. It's super satisfying to clear maps this way. Above all, you can throw your mines from a long distance and stay far from danger. Now to list the cons, I will start saying that mine gameplay isn't for everyone. Some players just can't get used to the detonation mechanic, but trust me, it's worth giving a try because mine builds have huge potential. Another issue is that this character is not very tanky. Because of that, you need to always mind your position or you might die. As for budget, this build is cheap. You can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 70 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Profane Proxy Ring that causes one of your Skither bots to have a curse aura. This way, the enemies you hit with your Hexblast are always going to trigger the big area damage, increasing a lot your clear speed. For clear speed, I'll give this build 9 out of 10. You are very fast and your mines explode in a big area, killing many monsters at once. It's very comfortable to clear maps with this character. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 9 out of 10. You can stack many mines and delete bosses with a huge detonation. This build has an incredible single target potential, even on a low budget. For the survivability, I'll give it 8 out of 10. Even though you have armor, evasion, spell suppression and can throw your mines from a big distance, this build is still not very tanky and needs to stay still from time to time to deploy the mines. That's why I took 2 points out. Finally, we have the super popular and spin to win Cyclone of Tumult Slayer with the Duelist class. The last PoE expansion brought the Transfigured gems with it. This means an alternative version of active skill gems. The Cyclone skill got the Cyclone of Tumult. It is a Cyclone wider and more powerful, but with the downside of being a lot slower. However, with an easy trick we can remove this downside and simply have a Cyclone with 33% more damage and 40% more area of effect. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its clear speed. It's just amazing to be always moving and massacring all the poor enemies on the way. The boss damage is also incredible. Once the build is done, you are going to kill even the big bosses in just a matter of seconds. And above all of that, this build is very simple and easy to put together. Now, to list the cons, I would point a few important issues and I'd like to ask you to pay close attention here. You see, this build has a great survivability once it's done. But when you're leveling your character, you need to pace your progression, because you're always very close to enemies. If you're not prepared, you are going to die. So take the extra time to pick up a few more levels before progressing to a high tier content. Another useful tip about your survivability is how to deal with stuns. On this build, you get stun immunity with cluster duels, but not everyone can afford them right away. If that's your case, or if you're just having problems with stuns sooner, do this simple trick of picking those evasion nodes and this mastery. Believe me, it helps a lot. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 115 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 6 divines. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Stampede boots that guarantee that your movement speed will always be 150% of its pace. This means that the downside of Cyclone of Tumult will mean absolutely nothing to us. For clear speed, I'll give it 9 out of 10. Cyclone never stops moving and have a huge area of effect, so you can farm your maps without the need to stop for casting or anything like that. It's just awesome and very satisfying. The boss damage is just amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. When this build is done, you're going to easily achieve over 15 million DPS that is more than enough to destroy bosses in just seconds. Now for the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build achieves over 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and a lot of instant life leech. Now, with the huge area of effect bonus from Cyclone of Tumult, you don't even need to stay very close to enemies on endgame, what gives you even more survivability. And that's it for today, guys. Are you playing any of those meta builds? Please don't forget to tell me in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day, and don't forget to keep building!